Thank you everyone for coming to our first speaker event as a collaboration between TeenTechSF and Bentley's Design Thinking Engineering Club. I'm going to be, after Swupnil gives a quick presentation, I'll be one of the people moderating the panel. So my name is Brian Whitney and I'm a junior at Bentley, which is in the East Bay. And then, Finn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name's Finn Higgins. So I go to Ross School. It's around San Francisco, Bay Area, and yeah, I use their company like every weekend pretty much. I do tennis lessons when I play tournaments. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, for those of you who aren't already familiar, Swupnil Sahai, who's our speaker today, he's the co-founder and CEO of SwingVision, which is a tennis AI startup, and he formerly worked as an engineer at Tesla, and he's going to be talking about his experience with all of that today. So Swupnil, I'll let you take it away.
Cool, thanks. Thanks everyone for having me. Really excited to be here and share some time with you guys and some fun stories, hopefully. So I'll maybe start off by just giving you guys a really quick presentation about SwingVision, just to give you a big background of like what we do, and also just a little bit of the startup journey there. And I'm sure we'll go into a lot more interesting questions and things like that after that, but I won't take too much time on this part. So let me just quickly share my screen here. Cool. So can you guys see my screen? I hope, let me turn off my do not disturb. Okay, there we go. So we're SwingVision, and our mission, the reason we exist, is to make it easier to learn, play, and enjoy ball and racket sports. So specifically, we're starting with tennis, but we do want to address other sports in the future. And we've been on the App Store for about a little over a year now, and in that time, we've been featured as App of the Day by Apple. We were featured in their keynote events in September. And we're now Tennis Australia's, essentially their official tennis tracking app. So a quick background on kind of our journey and how we started SwingVision. So I'm the co-founder and CEO, and then Richard is our co-founder and CTO. So we both met as undergrads at Berkeley. We were actually roommates there, and we both played tennis there together. So shared a common passion for tennis and also technology. So he studied electrical engineering and computer science, the famous ECS program at Berkeley. I did math and stats, so I actually did no engineering whatsoever. I was purely just like writing math problems and like proving theorems and stuff. So very different. And then I went to get my PhD at Columbia in statistics and machine learning. So I originally went there because I wanted to be a professor. So that's why I went to Columbia. And then as I was there, I also interned at Tesla a few times. I'll go into more detail about that later, but basically I really loved working at Tesla. Ended up finishing my PhD in 2017, came out back here to California, worked at Tesla in the Autopilot team, and specifically working on computer vision. So my problem that I was working on was detecting all the cars and pedestrians around you and making sure you don't hit stuff when you're on autopilot, essentially. So a lot of fun, had a lot of fun working there. And then Richard, after his undergrad, he went to Stanford immediately, did his master's in computer science there. Then he worked at LinkedIn for a couple of years, working on kind of their backend infrastructure. And then after that, he actually went to work at a startup called A Company, which was acquired by Cisco 2 years ago. So he was one of the first few engineers there. So, just became really, really experienced in like working in a startup and being one of the first engineers there. And then now he's our CTO. So he manages kind of our team of engineers. So he's awesome. And he's like one of my best friends. Like I was his best man at his wedding. So we're really, really tight. And so he and I kind of came together after these experiences that we had. And, we're both tennis players. We both had this issue where like we would play tennis, we'd like lose a match. We have no idea why we lost, what went wrong. And we wanted some way to track our performance, something to just tell us like, how can we improve our game? How can we actually win more points, win more matches? And it was kind of crazy because the solution to that problem exists in a lot of other sports. So if you look at sports like running or cycling, there's all kinds of really amazing tools and apps out there that help you track your performance and get a better understanding of how you're doing and what you need to do to improve. Strava is one of them, so that's probably the most popular one today in terms of running and cycling. And so we've seen products like this in other sports, but there wasn't anything like this really in ball and racket sports. And the main reason for that is because I think the technology just wasn't ready yet. So, if you're running out on the street or like in a park, or you're cycling, like you basically just need the GPS and maybe like an elevation like altimeter to understand kind of your performance in that sport. But in a sport like tennis or really any ball and racket sport, you're not really going a long distance. You're like contained to a field, but you're doing interesting things. You might be like hitting the ball, running around on the court. So the solution to the problem is different. And we realized a good solution to that problem would be computer vision, which means that if you can put your iPhone behind you and then just record your match, we can use that video and process that video to understand what's happening. And so you don't need to actually use GPS or any like fancy sensors. You really just need a camera that's looking at you and looking at what's happening. So that was our idea, was to make that a reality. And so we started out, we raised some initial money from some folks here in the Bay Area. Our first investors actually were Andy Roddick and James Blake, so former professional tennis players. So it was really cool to get their backing initially. And then since then, we've brought on a bunch of additional investors. One of the other noteworthy ones is a former CFO of Strava. So we have a really good group of kind of former tech executives, as well as folks from the fitness side and the sports side. So that's kind of how we started out. And then when we started out working on SwingVision, there were 3 kind of main problems we wanted to address. And we actually discovered these problems by running a bunch of surveys. So we built like an initial version of the app, which was just for your Apple Watch, and it was more just like fitness tracking on your tennis game. But we were able to build up a pretty decent number of users from just that product, that we were able to run surveys and ask them questions like, what are your biggest pain points in tennis? And so these were the 3 that came up the most often. So one was they wanted to be able to share their like on-court experience, because with tennis and most ball and racket sports, like you go, you play, then you leave. You have no way to share that experience. Strava really popularized that with running and cycling. You can share like nice maps of your run or share pictures, but that concept hasn't really been there for a sport like tennis. And so they wanted a way to share that. They also obviously wanted a way to improve their game, which was what was our big problem initially. And then another problem, which I think everybody has experienced if you play tennis, is line calling. So people make bad line calls all the time, and sometimes it's not even intentional. Like you just see things differently when you're on the court, and in the heat of the moment, it's hard to make the right call. So for those of you who aren't familiar with tennis, you have to call, if you're playing tennis, you have to call the ball in or out. That basically decides the end of the point. And so it's very subjective, and the players themselves are calling it, which is like a little bit sketchy if you think about it. So so we wanted to solve that problem, and everybody has their like horror story of that one line call that caused them to lose a match. So we wanted to solve that. And so these were kind of the pain points, the problems that we were really trying to solve with SwingVision. So we realized we could actually solve all these problems with one single technology, one single solution. And so the solution we came up with is a mobile app, and it runs just on your iPhone, and it provides all this amazing information. So provides professional quality stats tracking of all of your game and your performance. We also then use that to provide personalized coaching in terms of how to actually improve your game and track your progress over time. And then we also solve the problem of sharing your moments by creating highlights of your best rallies. So we automatically create highlights of your best points, which then you can share on like social media with your friends and family. And then later this year, we're going to be solving the line calling problem. And that's basically just a matter of getting the app more accurate. And the incredible part is it does everything from a single iPhone. And so the way it actually works is you just mount your phone behind you, behind the court, make sure you see kind of the entire court, and then just tap record, and that's pretty much it. It's super easy. Just like tap record, we do all the rest of the work for you. The way we actually do it is we have our own artificial intelligence that we've developed over the past 1.5 years that analyzes the video in real time. And it's like tracking the ball trajectory, it's tracking the player movements, all that stuff. And just based on that, it's able to create all these amazing things. And we do everything on the phone. So you don't need any internet. Like the video is not being streamed anywhere. It's all just on locally on your phone. And the phones are just so powerful now that they can do this. And it's pretty incredible because a lot of technology we're doing here, a lot of the computation that we're doing is like really intense. Like this is the kind of computation I was doing when we were at Tesla, building a self-driving car. And it's pretty crazy that we can do that now on a phone. So that's just giving you a sense of how powerful these phones have become now. And so that's what we've built. And just to give you guys a little idea of how it looks, I don't know if it's still sharing my screen. No. Okay, I'm just going to share my entire desktop actually. There we go. So this is a little demo of how it actually works. So that's a little ad where you get an idea sort of how it works. And so that's pretty much like what it does in real time. So it's really cool. And then in terms of kind of how this solution compares to like other products on the market. So if you're familiar with tennis, some of these might be familiar, but basically at the high end, you have like companies like Hawkeye, which are used in professional matches. And the way they do the line calling and like all the stats tracking is they put 10 cameras around the court. And so that costs like thousands of dollars. There's other solutions like PlaySight, which are a little bit more affordable, but still thousands of dollars. And at the very like basic level, you have these kind of sensors that you can stick on your racket, like ZEP, which give you some pretty basic stats, but don't really like do that much in terms of really helping you improve your game. It's more just like showing you some data. And so we're trying to bring that professional experience of like getting that video footage, getting all that really sophisticated analysis of the ball trajectory, but using just your iPhone. So it's just like hundreds of dollars instead of thousands or millions of dollars. And that's basically the big difference in what we're trying to do. And you know, the idea is we're not going to get to the same accuracy as what you have at the pros, but that's not really like the goal. Like the goal is to make it affordable and accessible to everybody. And that's essentially what SwingVision is relative to the market. And then this is just talking a little bit more about how we actually have been spreading the word about the product. So we haven't done too much in terms of marketing, but we are working with some clubs now here in the Bay Area, installing these phone mounts at the back of the court. So this thing that you see here, you just install it at the back of the court, and then it makes it really easy to set it up. And then you don't need to bring your own equipment or anything like that. So we think that every court in the world should have this kind of a setup. And again, this is very affordable. The amount of investment you need for this per court is really low in terms of how much benefit it's going to provide. So it's pretty exciting. And then we've also been really active on social media. So if you check out our Instagram, Swing Tennis is our handle on Instagram. So we've gotten a lot of traction there and just getting a lot of downloads through that basically. And that's been a really effective way for us to spread the word. Maybe we'll try TikTok at some point. So. And then lastly, we've also just built a really close relationship with Apple. So as I said, we were App of the Day back in November, and they also featured us in the keynote event in September. I'll just play that video really quickly too, because it's kind of cool. And you can see what Apple said about us in the context of the new iPad that they released in September. So I'll just play that segment here for you guys.
It's capable of processing up to 5 trillion operations per second. And it powers some magical experiences on iPad, like allowing you to instantly transform the color of your photos, or even analyze your tennis game and provide real-time stats like ball speed and body position. Altogether, the A12 Bionic takes performance to the next level and makes iPad more powerful than ever.
Yeah, so that was the Apple feature there. So that was really cool. We got a big hit of downloads after that. And we've just built a really good relationship with Apple. So we plan to do more things with them in the future. But yeah, so that's basically SwingVision. And I think we could probably then just go to questions and Q&A.
Okay, cool. And thank you for that presentation. Now I want to, you talked about your work at SwingVision, but I want to bring this back to like when you were growing up. So thinking back to that time, what were you interested in the most, and how did what you were interested in growing up and in high school lead into what you decided to pursue in college?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I don't know if you guys are going to like my answer, but when I was in high school, I wanted to do very different things. So when I was a freshman, I was obsessed with biology. We had this intro bio class that we took. I was at Monte Vista High School down in Cupertino. So we had this super difficult teacher. She was like notorious, and it was really hard class, like basically like AP level, I would say. Like it was really hard for a freshman class. But I did really well. I just loved it. I loved like the pig dissection stuff that we did there, and like just everything about bio. And I was like so good at it. I was like, for sure, I was like, I'm going to be a surgeon, like for sure. But then what happened was when we did get to the pig dissection part, I always got like kind of like, I don't know what the feeling is, but like just, you know, feel like throwing up basically, like nauseous. I just couldn't do it. And I'm somebody where like, if I get like a little cut anywhere, like on my body, like a little bit of blood, I just pass out. So I was like, okay, I don't think I can be a surgeon. That's too bad. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. So that went away. And then I was also into art. So I just love like sketching, and I took art classes in high school. So I was really into that as well. I thought maybe I might want to go into like architecture or something someday. But then that didn't really like, then I kind of lost interest, I guess, after a while. I still love art, but like not necessarily architecture per se. I realized it was probably going to be more like a hobby for me. And I think as I got towards the end of high school, I started to realize that like the thing I was really good at was math. And so I was like, I probably want to do something involving math, but I didn't know what that was going to be. I didn't know if I wanted to do engineering. Both my parents, by the way, were engineers initially in Silicon Valley. Now they're managers and stuff, but like they started out as engineers, computer scientists, and like doing pretty hardcore engineering. Like my mom worked at Intel for over 30 years, and she was working in compilers there. So actually like compiling code and all that. So not just writing code, but compiling it. So, I mean, they've both done really incredible work, but I did not want to do what they did. And I wanted to do like something very different. I didn't want to become a coder, which is ironic now. And I wanted to just do something else. So I knew I was good at math. So I was just like, let me try to figure out something I want to do with math. And so I basically by the end of high school, I was certain I was going to major in math, and then probably something else. Cause like just math alone you can't do that much with that. You could become a math professor, which is like really hard to do. But besides that, it's like you need to apply it to something. So my initial thought was so I got into Berkeley. I went to Berkeley, and I wanted to do business initially. So I was thinking I was going to apply to Haas, go to business school, but then I saw the curriculum, and there's a lot of like accounting classes. And for me, that didn't particularly interest me that much. So then I ended up majoring in economics instead, which those courses were a lot more quantitative, I would say. And I enjoyed those a lot more. And so that's why I kind of went in that direction. I took this like upper division microeconomics class my first year at Berkeley. And that's where I was like, okay, I think econ's an interesting one. So that's kind of how I got to that point. But I'll stop the answer there in case there were any other questions you had about high school.
Yeah, so I guess like when you were in high school, like were there any specific like colleges that you were looking at, or were you attracted to UC Berkeley for some reason?
No, actually, I wasn't that interested in going to Berkeley originally. I really wanted to go to private school. That was just kind of what I was taught. I guess my parents, you know, they went to public schools in the US for college when they came from India. And so I think their impression was that like private schools are just going to be better, because just why wouldn't it be better? It's private. And so that was just kind of the thinking I had going in. And so, you know, obviously I wanted to go to like the Ivy Leagues and all that stuff. I did get into a few Ivy Leagues, like Cornell and Dartmouth, got into the University of Chicago as well. So I got into a few private schools, but when I went and visited, I just didn't like them that much. I think it's just more for me, my personality, just kind of the visit day that I had, just talking to the other students. I don't know what it was. It's hard to describe, but when I went to Berkeley, I would just like immediately fell in love with it. And I was really surprised because I never thought I would like Berkeley, like just given like the location where it was, like, I don't know. I had some impression about it beforehand, which was totally wrong. And then I went there and I was just like, wow, this place is amazing. This is the place for me. So I really felt at home there. And that was why I chose it, honestly. And I think in retrospect, if you think about it, like, you know, all these schools, like they're all good schools. Like at the end of the day, especially when I look back now and I look at my colleagues, I don't know if I should call them colleagues, my classmates from high school, and like where they went to college and all that stuff, like at a certain level, it doesn't matter that much. Like everybody's had different trajectories and like different levels of success. And I think the place where they went to college has like very little correlation, honestly, with who was successful, in my opinion. So I don't know. I think if I could go back, I'd probably tell myself that like it's not the biggest deal to go to like private schools. There's plenty of good schools out there. Like all these colleges are great. They're all the best in the world. And so, you know, it's very small margins. It's not going to make much difference on your trajectory. That's what I would say. Obviously, you should still try to work hard and like try to do well. You don't want to just mess around. But you know, you shouldn't like just stress yourself about it so much because like it's just such small margins. But yeah.
Okay, cool. And now moving on to a different section. TeenTechSF is all about providing access to tech for all teens, and much of our audience is made up of people just getting into coding. So you mentioned that you initially didn't want to be a coder, but how did you like make that transition and get into coding? And what resources would you share with someone who's interested in starting?
Yeah, so I think the biggest mistake I made was not taking a single CS class at Berkeley. It's like such a wasted opportunity, such a good school, but I didn't do that. And I didn't take a CS class until I was doing my PhD. Actually, I was doing my PhD in statistics, and I think at that time I was looking for internships for my first summer or my second summer, I think it was, and most of the ones that seemed interesting to me were like things that were quantitative, like using math but in interesting problems, and data science kept coming up. I kept seeing these data science positions, data science intern. And I personally was obsessed with Tesla by that point already. I think I saw my first Tesla back in 2011. So this was already like when I think I was a freshman in Berkeley at that time. I saw the Roadster at Santana Row. That was the first store that they had. And I remember seeing it and I was just like, wow, these guys made an electric car that's like goes so fast. Like this is insane. This is the coolest thing ever. So I really wanted to work at Tesla just because of their mission. Like I didn't care what I did there. I just wanted to do something there. And I remember when I was in my PhD, I saw they had some data science positions in like reliability engineering, which is like, I don't know what that was, but it was just, it's doing something involving math and it's at a company I love. So I was like, that's cool. Let me try that. And obviously I applied to other positions, but that was like, in my mind, that was the dream one. Like if I could get Tesla, that would be like the dream thing. But then I saw that like all these data science positions, they all required some sort of coding. And I learned to code a little bit, I guess, through my stats undergrad, but it was like really basic. And I just realized like, I'm gonna have to learn Python. I'm gonna have to just like learn how to code. And so, yeah, the first couple of things I did was I did take a couple intro classes just on like data structures at Columbia. And then the biggest thing that happened to me that was actually, I started working on the first version of Swing when I was in my PhD program, like my first year. I already started working on it. And specifically, I was building like the watch app. And because the watch had just come out around that time, the Apple Watch. And so I was building like the first tennis app for Apple Watch ever. And they had just introduced this new language called Swift, which is now like the most popular language for iOS development. By that time, it was like a brand new language that Apple invented. And so I taught myself Swift online. That's basically what I did. So I used, I think it was Ray Wenderlich. I haven't gone to that website in a while, but that's the one I used. And I just followed these tutorials on like how to make an app. And again, going into this, I had like no experience in coding at all. So I just followed tutorials online on how to make like really basic apps with Xcode. And then slowly as I built that and worked on that more and more, I just became like really adept at kind of basic programming, I would say. I didn't really become a really good software engineer until I worked at Tesla, but at least I got to the point where like I understood the basics. I did a little bit of Python there on the side just because I knew that that's what people were going to use in actual industry. But I think that website itself has amazing tutorials for app development and probably other things too. But that's the one I used, and there's probably newer ones now. But I would just say like there's so many online resources. And I mean, if someone like me who has no coding background could pick that up, I think, you know, you should be able to do it too. Obviously, it requires a lot of discipline and like you need to be motivated to do it. And what helped me was I was working on such a fun project, like building this tennis app, which I want to use when I go on the court. So for me, it was very, really fun working on it. Like I would be up late at night. I would push away my PhD research and just like stay up coding because like I had so much fun with it at a certain point. And so app development in particular was really cool for me because you can see the results really fast. Like you can just write a few lines of code and then run it on your phone. And it's like, wow, I just created a brand new app that no one's ever had before. And I just did that with a few lines of work. Like it's crazy. So I think it's very powerful to be able to create your own thing. And I think, you know, thinking of a project that you think is fun, that like, you know, that excites you is always going to make it a lot easier. And of course, if you have a CS class at your school, like in your high school, which many do now, then definitely take that. That's a good way to do it because it's a very structured environment. But I think beyond that, you know, if you happen to go to school maybe where you don't have access to that, there are a lot of online resources. So, yeah.
Finn, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, okay. So we know that after you finish your PhD, you started out as a data science intern at Tesla. So, like, did you ever expect to get an offer back to Tesla? Like, what was searching for a job like?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I interned at Tesla twice actually. So my first internship there, I was in data science. I was doing data science for reliability engineering. So to explain you guys a little bit of background, Tesla has a reliability team, which their sole purpose is to just like test kind of all the different parts that go into the car. You know, whether it's like the door handles or like the mirror or it's like the motor, like all these, you know, thousands of parts in a car, right? And so there's like all kinds of testing that needs to be done in a lab, and they go through like all this stress testing. Like they'll run the motor like really, really fast for like thousands of hours and then see when it like burns out. So all these different tests that they do for all the different parts. There's actually one that was really fun was when they were making the Cybertruck, they had the big glass in the front, the big windshield. And so one test was to just like throw heavy stuff at the Cybertruck. And as you saw when Elon announced it, he threw something and it kind of shattered the glass a little bit. But that was actually like someone's job, was to just like throw stuff at the window and like see what happens. So I didn't get to do those things, but my teammates did. So my job was more just like trying to figure out, can you basically make some understanding about like the reliability of this part based on just a few tests? Because like you have limited time, you can only do like so many tests for some parts. And so I was trying to see like, can you almost like extrapolate the lifetime of this part based on like just a few observations in the lab? And so I was building some statistical tools around that in Python. And so anyway, so while I was there, like that was really fun for me to work on because I got to like learn Python on the job essentially. Like I didn't really know it. I kind of faked it on my way into the interviews and stuff. But they were really nice and they gave me the job. And then I learned it on the job. And then by the end of the internship, like I was just so good at Python. And the team saw that. The team saw how fast I learned that and how fast I grew. That at that point, they actually told me that if I dropped out of my PhD, they would just hire me for a full-time job. And I almost considered it. But I was like, oh, I really want to be a professor someday. I want to leave that option open. So I'm like, thanks guys, but I'm not going to do that. But one thing I did do was I at that time I heard about Autopilot. And I was like, that sounds really cool. And I'm sure there's like some stats involved in Autopilot. I didn't know anything about machine learning, or I mean, I knew about machine learning, but I didn't know much about like neural networks, which is like a specific subfield of machine learning that's used for Autopilot. And so I kind of networked. I somehow I talked to an intern who was on the Autopilot team, and then he introduced me to the VP of Autopilot at the time, he's now at NVIDIA. And I had a conversation with him, and basically just based on the conversation, he was like, oh yeah, sure, just come back to the Autopilot team next summer, which is crazy because like I thought it would be way harder than that. But you never know what can happen. Like just having that conversation, like it can open up so many doors. And obviously I was super nervous. I was just like a little intern, like talking to the VP who reports directly to Elon. But he was really nice. He listened to me. He got feedback from my team about my performance as an intern. And he was just really impressed with my background. And so then he invited me to come back. And then that following summer when it came to Autopilot, it was crazy because then I was doing C++ and it was like really hardcore. And I did not know C++ that well. So once again, I had to learn everything on the job. And I also had to learn like about neural networks on the job. So there's this like Stanford course on convolutional neural networks that's like really popular now. And all the lecture notes are online. So I just read all those notes my first week of my internship. That's all I did. I just read the course notes for that. And then by the end, I was like, okay, I think I know enough to at least get started. And then obviously, you know, you learn more as you do it, as you actually do the actual projects. But yeah, certainly a lot of luck involved there. I somehow like got up there, and then I did very well in that internship as in the Autopilot team. And so by the end, then yeah, by the end of my internship, Tesla gave me the offer, and they said, as soon as you're done with your PhD, just come back and we'll hire you. So that was really nice. So I already knew at the end of the summer that I was going to go to Tesla the following year when I finished my PhD. But yeah, that was the journey.
the environment like working at Tesla? Like, were people like super friendly or just focused on their job like all the time? Any like funny stories you had working there?
Sorry, what was the last part?
Like any other funny stories you had while working at Tesla?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I still remember the first day, my first day I was at Tesla, the first internship that I did. I just remember being so surprised by the open floor plan. Like everything was just flat. Like, and what I mean by that is there's no cubicles or anything like that, which I think a lot of tech companies are like that now. But it was just like flat tables everywhere. And then especially when I was like interning for Autopilot the first time, there was only like 8 people on the team. And the VP's desk was just like right in front of mine. Like he didn't have a special office or anything. Everybody's the same basically. And then I remember kind of like walking around the office, and I remember looked at the org chart. I was like, let me go find Elon's desk. So I went and then walked around, and I saw his desk, and like it was also the same thing. It was a little bit bigger, but it wasn't like a special room for him or anything. So that was like really cool that like everybody's like the same. So that was very interesting to me. I had worked at Apple before as an undergrad. That was my first internship ever. Actually, was with Apple, and it was very different. It was like cubicles and like more separation. The office has the manager of the team has their nice like office with their own room, and like you can close the door. So very different vibe. So that was like one thing that stood out to me. In terms of the culture, yeah, I mean, they work super hard. Like it's just everything's about the work for sure. The culture is like that, but everybody's having a lot of fun too, because it's kind of like what I described when I was first working on Swing, where I would like stay up late at night, just like coding because I was having so much fun. Like that's how I describe the culture. Like, yes, they do work hard. I would say they work harder than most big established tech companies. They don't have lots of meetings, but everybody really loves it. I mean, it's like one of the coolest products in the world. Like, how could you not have fun, right? Like, so it's just you're really enjoying it. People are there like late hours, but I mean, it's friendly. Like, it's not like it's hostile or anything like that. I think I still miss my friends at Tesla so much, and like all the memories we had, and like working together. And I mean, I look so fondly on that time. Like, it was really one of the best times in my life. I'm very thankful that I worked there. So I think is a great environment, and it is intense, and it's not for everybody. I think it's, you know, certainly people who are younger probably do better there. Once you have a family, it's harder to dedicate that kind of time away from your family. So I get it. I was very lucky to work there again while I was like in my 20s. But I think it's a great environment. And what's cool is there's this like shared mission with Elon's other companies. So I still remember that day so fondly, the day that he did that launch where the 2 rockets went up and then they took the Roadster into space, and the 2 rockets came back down like simultaneously. And everybody in Tesla was watching it. Like everybody was like huddled around our little monitors, and we were all watching it, and we were all cheering, even though none of us work at SpaceX. But it was just this like common mission that like we're working in these amazing companies that are kind of making humanity better in some way. And so that was just so fun. That was like one of the funnest stories. And then I mean, yeah, I have lots of good Elon stories. So if you want to hear those, I don't know if you're interested in those, but okay. So Elon stories. So firstly, when I worked at Tesla full-time, Elon's desk was 15 feet away from mine. So Autopilot was like the central focus for him. We joked and we said we were under the eye of Sauron. So it's like Lord of the Rings, but like basically we're all like in his focus. He knows what we're doing all the time. So like the entire Autopilot team is right there in front of Elon's desk. Like to him, it's like the highest priority thing. And then my desk just happened to be like right in front of him. So I could see him literally every time he was there. He was in meetings all day. So there's this big conference room right in front of his desk. So he would kind of go in there with a meeting with like the product team, and then go back out and go back in with meeting with like Model 3 team and so on. So he just has like back-to-back meetings all day. I don't know how he tweets so much, because like he was just in back-to-back meetings all day. It's crazy. So he's like really busy. And then we had our weekly Autopilot meeting. So we had the Autopilot team had this like 1 hour slot like once a week with him. And not everybody in the Autopilot team, because there's like hundreds of people, but I somehow worked my way into those meetings within the first couple of months that I was there. So I was basically meeting with him on a weekly basis. And I was presenting my work all the time. So all the work I was doing on the object tracking, any new updates I had, I was presenting that to him and showing him like demos and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, lots of funny things in those meetings. I think, trying to think, there was one meeting which was really funny. So Elon like jokes a lot. He's very sarcastic, as you can probably tell. And so there was one meeting where someone made some reference to like a robot, like a robot servant or something. I don't know how we got to this. This is some weird tangent we went on. And then he was like, oh, that's like that episode in Rick and Morty where there's like the little robot that like passes the butter. And many of you probably don't watch Rick and Morty because it's an adult show, but anyways, he thought it was so funny. And then he had an engineer pull up that episode of Rick and Morty. He's like, does nobody get this reference? Because like a lot of the people on the team didn't watch the show, so they didn't understand what he was talking about. And a lot of the younger people like me got it, so we were just like laughing because they're like, why are we talking about this right now? And then he's like, no, everybody needs to understand this reference right now. Like, pull up that episode. So then some engineer pulled up the episode, that exact episode, and we watched that like 5-minute or 2-minute segment of Rick and Morty, like in the middle of an autopilot meeting, and then we were all just laughing. So that was hilarious. So yeah, this is like one of the fun memories. There was another time where we were trying to ship a brand new update, which would allow the car to take exits off of the highway automatically. So the first time that we ever did that, that was like a big development push in the summer of, I think, 2019. And so there was one weekend where he asked us all to come in because like, I guess the progress just wasn't good enough to his standards. Like the rate of the progress. So he had us all come in that weekend, and then he said he's going to come by everybody's desk in the Autopilot team, no matter whether you're an intern or just like a regular engineer or a manager. He's going to come by every single person's desk, ask what you're working on, and then ask what help do you need? Like, how can I help you go faster? And so we were all terrified. Even those of us who like meet with him on a regular basis were like, oh my God, he's going to come look at my desk and like see what I do. And I have to explain to him my work. And like, I hope he doesn't think I'm useless. And so he came by and then like came by each person's desk. And despite us being so scared, he was so nice. Like he was very inquisitive and just trying to understand like what problems we're trying to have. And then he's like, what help do you need? And so for my team and my group of people, we needed some help with more like servers, like GPU servers, so we can like train more machine learning models. Basically just buy like more computers, essentially was our problem. And so he's like, oh yeah, sure, like we'll order like a few. How many do you need? Like we'll get them ordered for you. So he was just very helpful, and it was very interesting. Like he cut through all the noise of like, typical companies have like your engineers and then your manager and then the CEO. He just went like straight to the engineers and was like, tell me what's wrong. I'm going to get it done for you. I'm going to make sure you can go like 10 times faster. So it was very incredible. It was very inspirational to see that, and I think I take a lot of learning from that when in my job now at SwingVision. Obviously, our team's way smaller, so it doesn't really like totally apply. But I think it was very cool to see that. That was awesome. And then basically at the end of the day, he ordered Chick-fil-A for everybody, so we all had Chick-fil-A in the office. So that was fun. So that was a good day. And then one other story that I should share is after we had that launch, he invited the entire Autopilot team to his house. So at the time, he had this really big mansion in Hillsborough, and it was ridiculous. It was like the driveway was like a mile long. Like it was just his driveway, a mile long to the top of the hill. It's just, I guess, this is what billionaires do. And so anyway, so we go there for a party. We're all there, and he's like giving us a tour of the house. So he's like walking around the house, like showing us these gigantic paintings that he has. And then he showed us this bar that he had, which is really cool because it would like swivel around, like literally like a movie. You could swivel, and there's like a secret room in the back where he has like his stash of all his drinks and stuff. And then he took like tequila shots with us. It was just so funny. But he's a funny guy. But he's awesome, and he was a good manager, I think. I mean, he was intense, but it was fun. And I could go on with stories, but I'll stop there, I think, for the next question.
Okay, so in 2019, you made the decision to leave Tesla and co-founded SwingVision. So, like, what made you go off to create SwingVision, and like, what was your initial vision for the company?
Yeah, so basically, question about leaving Tesla to join SwingVision, right? So I guess to start with, the vision has changed many times. So when I was originally doing my PhD, that's when I built the first version of Swing, which was for your Apple Watch. So you put your Apple Watch in your dominant hand, it would track your tennis workout, it would track your strokes, like it would count forehand, backhand. It would even detect the speed of your strokes, which is pretty cool. And so the initial vision at that time was just like, I want a way to track my game somehow. And one thing that was very popular with that app was you could keep score. So you could like swipe up and down on your watch, and then like it would just mark who won the point. And it seems like a very basic thing, but that enables all kinds of statistics about your game. You can suddenly understand like which type of points are you winning based on the score and all that stuff. And so that was the initial vision, was like, I want everybody to experience that. But what it turned out was not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to keep score on their watch. It's just kind of like, it's kind of annoying. And so we wanted to build, what we realized was, I want everybody to have that end experience of being able to get all that data and understanding exactly like how to win, but I don't want them to have to keep score on their watch. So I was like, how could we make it easier? Like, how can I automate this? And so that's when I realized that, like, well, if we use the camera, we can see what's happening. We know who won the point from the camera. If a human watches a match and can tell who won the point, then AI should be able to do it too. And so we should be able to just do it that way. And so that was what the next vision was like. Actually, let's just fully automate this thing. Let's keep score for you automatically. Let's call the lines for you automatically. Let's do all that stuff automatically. And it sounds great in theory. It's very hard to do, right? So we realized like we could do it with the camera. And I didn't know anything about how I would build that. I have no idea like what that technology would require. But then once I worked at Tesla for a couple of years, I was like, okay, I know exactly how to make this thing. Like, I know it like the back of my hand. I know exactly how we're going to do it. And so I just got that confidence working at Tesla, like working on such an even harder problem, that I knew I could do it. And so at that point, it was basically getting to the point where I was still working on Swing. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was working on Swing the entire time while I was working on a Tesla. So like it was not healthy. I was working way too much, but I was doing both things at the same time. And basically all my free time was going to Swing. And my parents saw this, and basically my parents are the ones who pushed me, because they basically said like, you're having so much fun working on Swing, and like this is your idea, like this is a chance for you to do your own thing. And so they actually really encouraged me to leave Tesla and just work on it full time, because first of all, it would be better for my health, but also it's just, you know, I had this awesome idea, and like no one else in the world is doing it, and like I know exactly how to do it. It just makes sense. Like why wouldn't I not do it? And so for me internally, it was really hard. I think for my parents, it was like easy, but for me, it was hard, because I was like, man, I love working at Tesla. Like there's nothing wrong with this job. I absolutely love it. Every day I go in, I'm having so much fun working on such a cool problem. And I'm so lucky. Like this is literally my first job out of school. Like how often does that happen? I feel like I got the lottery. So I felt so bad leaving Tesla because of that. But I think ultimately I realized like, you know, I had a chance to make this, you know, incredible company that like no one else is doing. And like, if I thought of, the more I thought about it, I was like, I am the perfect person to do this. Like, there's no other reason this should, you know, this is gonna succeed if I do it. So yeah, I just kind of took that chance, and then yeah, the rest is history, basically.
Nice. So how were you able to establish connections in order to like get like your company out there? So, like, how did you get connected with the Australian Open and Apple's Keynote?
Yeah, so how did I get connected to like Australian Open? We just did a feature with the Australian Open. How to get connected to Apple? Yeah, I mean, it's just all those things happen over time. Like I didn't have those connections when I first started out. I think when I first started out, I just had connections to like a few people in the Bay Area who had started companies before. So you know, that helped obviously in terms of raising some initial money. The James Blake and Andy Roddick is actually a really good story. So that one, a friend of mine from high school went on to play professional tennis. He was really good, and his physio, who's a doctor at Kaiser in San Jose, has a company called Cramps Away. So Cramps Away is this like solution that you like swirl in your mouth, and it takes away your cramps in like 15 seconds. And so like a lot of professional players use this and depend on it. And so I got introduced to that doctor, and the doctor was like, well, the face of Cramps Away is James Blake. Do you want to meet him? So he was really nice, and he introduced me to James Blake. So I flew down to San Diego. This was while I was still working at Tesla, by the way. So I flew down to San Diego. I met with James Blake, and then I pitched him my vision of SwingVision, which was using the camera to do everything. And so he like just loved it right away. And so he was our first investor actually. And then at that point we were trying to think, can we get like another like kind of professional tennis player on? And so he's like, well, I'm good friends with Andy Roddick. So then he invited me to Texas. So he was doing this exhibition match in Texas. And it's like probably the most surreal moment I've ever had in my life. But I basically walk in with James into the locker room. There's the locker room where they're just like hanging out before the exhibition match. And then like Andy Roddick walks in, and then Jim Courier walks in, and then John McEnroe walks in. And I met all of them, and I was just like starstruck. I was like, oh my God, what is going on right now? Why am I this like random dude with like these 4 tennis players in the locker room right now? So I definitely felt the imposter syndrome probably more than I ever have in my life. And anyway, so I like shook hands with all of them. John McEnroe was really funny. He's like, oh, Swupnil, like, you don't hear that every day. So he was kind of funny. And then I actually pitched to all of them. John McEnroe wasn't that interested. He's just like, I don't know this tech thing. And then, Jim Creer was actually super nice, really sweet guy. He was actually very interested, but ended up not investing because he just doesn't have as much experience investing. But Andy was the one who was like really interested, and he's a really prolific real estate investor. He's invested a lot around the country in real estate. He's invested in other startups. I didn't even know this, but he's actually invested in like this cookie delivery startup in Texas and like a bunch of different startups. And so he was really impressed by us. He was impressed by our team. And I think what sold him actually was really funny. So at the end of that day, he had to leave the locker room to go catch his flight, like back to North Carolina or something. And he couldn't find his phone because he couldn't find it. And then James like tried calling it, it wasn't answering. So his phone's like somewhere there in the locker room, but he can't find it. And he literally has to catch a flight like right now. He needs to leave right now. So I was like, wait, if you log into iCloud on my laptop, I can play a sound on your phone. And he couldn't believe it. He's like, is that a thing? Like that's possible? Because these are tennis players. They don't necessarily tech savvy. So for me, this was obvious. It's like, yes, Find My iPhones existed for like a decade. Come on. But anyway, so he didn't know that. So I logged in. He literally logs in. Like it's crazy. Like I can see all his devices. I can see like Brooklyn Decker's like iPhone. Like it's all on my laptop right now. It's so weird. And then I ping it, and then it's like there in the corner of the thing of the room, and he finds it. And then he comes up to me. He's like, "Are you on Venmo? I'll Venmo you 50K right now. Like, I'll do the investment right now." So he didn't literally Venmo me, but it was really funny. And then he went home, and then we talked a little bit after that. Then he invested, but pretty funny story. So my tech skills were useful for once, and actually probably sold that investment. So yeah, so that's how we got to him. And then I mean, some of these other things like with Apple, it's really just been them reaching out to us. So Apple really does a really good job of like going through the store and finding apps that they think really stand out. And so again, this actually happened when I was in my PhD. When I launched that watch app, someone at Apple reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've been looking for a really good application of the watch to sports, and we love what you did with Swing. Can we chat?" And so at that time, that's how we started that relationship. They actually featured us on the Apple website when the Series 4 watch came out. And then since then, we've just been in touch, and I've been telling them about kind of the next thing that we're working on. And so they've been helping like push that in. And so that same guy who I talked to actually back in like 2015, he's still my main point of contact at Apple. And every time there's an update coming out, he just like pushes it in Apple and like pushes it to the marketing team, and then just see if anybody wants to feature it in something. So it was really just all them. They just reached out to us. We didn't do anything. And I think what caught their eye was we just focused on really good design from the beginning. Like our first app was just like really, really nicely designed. And we've just focused on like user experience and things like that. So I think that's stuff that Apple likes. So I think if you put in the work out there and you start to get some traction, Apple will notice. Like they have teams dedicated to finding like the next best apps. And so unfortunately, that's the only way. So there's a little bit of luck. Like you can't just reach out and like send them a bunch of emails. Like that's not really going to work. They're just going to have to find you. But I think if you put in the work and you just build a really solid app that like a small community of people really, really loves, and like you have good ratings on the App Store, and you're like listening to them and improving it, and then Apple will notice it. And so that's my advice there. And then as for like the Australian Open and all of that, we went through a startup accelerator actually this past summer called Techstars. And so there's an accelerator based out of Melbourne. So I was actually supposed to be in Melbourne last summer, but I didn't get to go because of the pandemic. But that accelerator was hosted in part by Tennis Australia. And so that's how we built that relationship with Tennis Australia. And so now Tennis Australia is an investor in SwingVision. And so from there, naturally went to the Australian Open. So that's how we did that partnership with the Australian Open. Sorry, long answers.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, and you talked a lot about how you got some initial investment into SwingVision. And I was wondering if you'd expand on like, as a startup, how do you raise funds? Like, have you talked to venture capitalists, or how does all of that work?
Yeah, so I mean, we haven't really talked to venture capitalists too much yet. That's typically when you're trying to raise like a larger sum of money. I guess we have talked to a few. The initial impression I've gotten, at least, is that we're not a traditional company that they've been investing in recently. Like they've been investing a lot in like enterprise companies, which are companies building software for other companies. So we're building software for individuals, not companies. So it's less of a like interesting market right now. And then also it's like specifically in sports, which not a lot of people consider like a very large market. I think this can be like a venture-backed company eventually, but I think we just need more data to prove it to them. So we've basically gone the route of getting angel money. So angel money means individual investors. And yeah, I mean, that process is basically kind of, first of all, you know, it's like trying to figure out angel investors like in your network. So, you know, I would like maybe look through LinkedIn and then see like who's an angel investor who's invested in sports before, let's say. And then like, how can I get to them? Like, do I have any contact who knows them? Is there somebody who can give me an introduction? So cold emailing almost never works with investing. Like, it's very rare. It's just this unique thing where, like, at least in Silicon Valley, like, you need some introduction, a warm introduction from somebody. So I was really fortunate that I knew people already who were existing investors, like my dad's friends, or just people who knew other investors. So certainly a lot of luck there. I think if I wasn't based in the Bay Area, it would be very hard. And then, yeah, so they made the right introductions to me. I basically told them that, like, this is what I'm working on. We're trying to raise a little bit of money. Like, you know, are you willing to do like a small investment, like 50K, 25K, which I know is a lot of money, but like for a lot of these investors, like, it's not a lot of money. They're just used to investing that much. That's kind of the standard amount. And so, yeah, so that's kind of just how we did it. Just kind of a bunch of different people, individuals investing like 25, 50K each. And that's been like most of our funding so far, actually. We haven't really done like a single large check of like $1 million or anything like that. I think we will eventually, probably this summer, because we're starting to get some good traction now. But I think, you know, the other thing that helped is we had an existing product out there. Like, we had the watch app. So they saw that we did something. We did something that some users liked. Some community of users really liked it. Apple really liked it. It wasn't the final product of what we're trying to make, but it was at least something that showed that we know how to do, like, make a product that people love. And I think that's always really helpful, you know, because the thing is, like, a lot of what we did, like, it didn't cost us money to do that. Like, I built the app myself. I just coded in my free time. I didn't have to spend thousands of dollars to make that first app. So you can get started. There's a lot of things you can do to get started to build that first product and, like, get that initial, like, set of people who like it and are, like, giving you feedback. And that's typically going to be enough, actually, to raise like an initial set of money. And if you're going to raise like a lot more money, then yeah, you're going to have to probably, like, you know, actually build it out and like hire people and all that. But you can go really far without hiring anybody, especially today with how accessible it is to learn how to code. I think like anybody can start a business now, which is really exciting.
Very cool. And in terms of entrepreneurship, what would be like your biggest piece of advice for someone looking to create their own company?
Yeah, I mean, I think don't doubt like that you can do it. Even if you don't know how to code, I think I should be a good example of this. Like, I had no idea how to code. I totally wasted my undergrad not learning how to code, and it was fine. Like, it all worked out fine. I was able to pick it up later. I was able to build a company. Now this is my life. This is what I do now. This is literally my job, is just working on this product now. So it's like, there's a way to get there. Obviously, there's some luck involved along the way. I think the fact that you're attending this conference means you're already on the right path. You're like clearly already have access to good resources here. So, you know, you've already won the lottery. You're in a good position. Now it's just a matter of like using that that position that you have, the power that you have now to like teach yourself and just go out and do it. And I would say, I don't know how you guys, I know some of you are like working on this stuff in high school, which is like crazy to me. I don't know how you're doing that, but college, you have a lot of time in college. So if you don't do it now, it's fine. You can do it in college. You'll have so much time in college. Like, it's just crazy how much free time you have in college. Like, I just had a lot of fun, but I could have also been working more too. So there's a lot you can do, and you'll have plenty of opportunities. You know, and I think that's the other thing to also say is like, this isn't a race. Like, you don't have to be like the first one to do it at like the youngest age. Like, you literally have your whole life to do this. And you have many times to make mistakes and like fail and then start again and whatever. So I think you shouldn't think of it in terms of a time thing. It's just more of, I need to build that experience. I need to go out and do it. I need to have the ambition and like motivation to just like get started. It's always that initial like getting started. Once you get started, then you're gonna start rolling. So, you know, don't hesitate. Like, just try something out. That's what I would say.
Okay, so just for the final section, we're going to do something that we call the lightning round, where we just ask you a bunch of different questions. Like, the first one is like, what's your favorite book?
Oh, is that the first question? What's my favorite book?
Yeah.
So I'll preface this by saying that I don't read that much. I should. I'm a really slow reader. It's really embarrassing. Like, I'm so slow. Like, my fiance, she's in med school. Like, she reads stuff so fast. I'm so slow. But anyways, I think my favorite book probably like 1984 or Brave New World. I'm really into that type of stuff. So to me, those are just like amazing, amazing books.
Oh, nice. You have a favorite movie?
Favorite movie, probably Forrest Gump or Pulp Fiction. Yeah, very different movies, but I think those are like at the top for me. Incredible.
So, what do you like to do away from SwingVision?
Away from SwingVision, I'm probably on the tennis court using SwingVision, but yeah, I don't know. Besides that, I love traveling. Unfortunately, can't right now, but I'm like obsessed with traveling. I've been to a lot of countries, and I love traveling with my fiance. We've just been everywhere, so I love doing that and like trying new food and just like learning about different cultures. That's really important to me too.
Speaking of food, what is your favorite food?
Favorite food. I think it's a tie between like sushi and Thai food, and probably Indian food because I can never say no to Indian food. But if that's kind of cheating, so Thai food and sushi, I'd say this is the top for me.
All right, last question. What do you think is going to be the next big thing in tech?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel really strongly about augmented reality. I've been talking to a lot of companies recently working on like smart contact lenses and stuff like that. And I just think it's the natural next step for us. I think what's going to happen is you're not going to own a bunch of devices. You're not going to have like your laptop and your phone and like your watch. Like if everything's on a lens, you can simulate like any screen size. So you don't need to own like all these different devices. So I feel like that's the future. I don't know when it's going to come because it's very hard to make that. I hope I can play some part in that, but I do think that's kind of the next step in terms of technology and just making like information more accessible to everybody, and kind of leveling the playing field more, I feel like.
Okay, sounds good. I'll just give a quick second. I know we're over time. If any of the people here have any questions.
Yeah, I'm totally happy to stay on like answering more questions. This is pretty fun. So any other questions you guys have, like totally happy to answer.
I see one from Ivy who says, how do you implement machine learning?
Oh no, that's a tough one. Well, I guess I can explain a little bit about how we do it with SwingVision. So there's actually a few steps involved, but the first step is to collect a bunch of data. So either you can go out and find a data set in the real world. We go and collect our own footage. Now our users provide data for us because like literally anybody who uses SwingVision records their match. That's data. Video is data. So you have to collect a bunch of data typically, and then you have to label that data. So there is a manual process involved. You have to kind of like label what's happening. So in our case, we'll have like a video of a tennis match. We have our own labelers, and their job is basically to like watch the entire video and just label like what's happening. Like, okay, at this timestamp, a forehand was hit. At this timestamp, a backhand was hit. At this timestamp, the ball bounced at this particular location on the court. So you have to label your data. This is called like annotation or labeling. Once you've done that, you basically have the information you need to train a machine learning model. Because a machine learning model basically takes in two things. It takes in like some sort of data like video or text, and then it takes in what it needs to predict. In our case, like maybe it's to predict what shot was just hit or what where the ball bounced. So you need those two pieces of information. Once you have those two together, then you train a machine learning model. There's various types of machine learning models that are out there. And typically training it basically means like go through all this data and like learn what part of, in our case, video, like what part of the video like is correlated with like forehand. Like what about this video is like telling me that like a forehand is being hit? What about this video telling me that a backhand is being hit right now? So the model learns that iteratively by looking at millions of examples of forehands and millions of examples of backhands, and it comes up with its own representation of like what a forehand is. You don't even teach it explicitly like that, like a forehand's like this. It just picks it up by looking at the patterns. And so to train that process, we do that in Python typically. There's all kinds of ways to do that in Python, but we use something called PyTorch, which is a library in Python specifically for machine learning. And if you take a look at that Stanford class, I think it's CS 231, they also use Python as well. So if you're interested in learning more, that's kind of more the nitty gritty of it. And then once you've trained your model, then you have this model that can like now make predictions on like new data. So now you can pass in like a brand new video that it's never seen before, and it'll do like a pretty decent job of predicting like a forehand was just hit, a backhand was just hit, and so on. And then once you have that model, then you kind of put it into the app. So there's some tools to convert it into a format that iOS accepts, and then we just put it into the app. And then the basic idea for us is we're never done. The problem's never done. You keep collecting more data. So like as more users use it, we get more footage, our labelers label more footage, and then it gets smarter and better over time. And then it's really important for us for tennis because like people have different playing styles and different strokes. Like some people hit like this, some people like bring their back, bring the hand back lower. Like everybody has different playing styles. And so it's really important to have diversity of data. It's important to have like various different kinds of the same type of thing. So we need various different kinds of forehands, various different kinds of backhands. And the more that we get, the more robust it's going to be, to new people who use the app. But that's kind of a little summary of how it works.
Okay. So I know there's another question, but first, Ivy asked, so in the beginning, you have to manually label when analyzing?
Typically you do, yeah. I mean, that's if you're building like your own data set from scratch. If you guys want to get started on the machine learning project, like there's tons of data out there that's already been labeled. Like so many research projects and open source projects where like people have collected a lot of data and like already done the hard work to label it. And then at that point, it's up to you to just combine it together and like make your own model out of it. So, I mean, you don't have to label it, but for our specific problem, like there was no data out there like this. Like there wasn't like thousands of hours of tennis footage, and then it was like forehands and backhands were labeled. So we had to create our own. But depending on the problem you're trying to solve, maybe there's already data set out there. And if there is, use it. It's great to have because it'll save you a lot of time and probably money. So yeah, definitely go for it if the data's out there.
And then another question is, what's been the biggest stumbling block you faced with Swing so far?
Oh man, I feel like there's a stumbling block every week that we go over. But I think the biggest one was probably that first summer when we were working on it. So after I left Tesla, just building the first version of the app that could like track the shots and everything, that took us about 5 months to build, which is actually pretty fast if you think about it. But yeah, there was one point in that summer where we had the models training, and they were actually doing a pretty decent job of predicting like whether the ball is in or out and like where it's landing on the court and all that stuff. And we had that working in Python. So like our machine learning engineers were like doing a good job of getting it to work in Python, but then we were having a lot of problem like converting it and like running it properly on the iPhone. Like it just wouldn't work. The algorithm would just spit out garbage. And we spent probably like 2 or 3 weeks on this, just getting it to run. Like the thing that we've already built that we know works on a computer, getting it to run on an iPhone just wasn't happening. And so we were just so disheartened. Like internally, I was like, oh my God, there's no way this company's gonna succeed. Like, what's the point? Like, we're not gonna be able to, if you can't run this on the iPhone, like basically the whole thing is dead. And so we were just like so sad, and it was so difficult. And then finally we just somehow found a way, and it was literally 1 line of code, as it always is. And it was like a 1-line change. And then there's just something we had to do different on the Python side, like 1 line, and then it allowed everything to work. But it was crazy because like in that moment we thought like there's no way we would succeed. And somehow we found a way to convert it properly. I mean, to explain it, it wasn't really like a problem with storage or anything, but it was really just the language, like the computer programming language that the model was written in Python is different than what it needs to be written in to work on iOS, and that translation was having some issues. But yeah, that was probably the biggest one and the scariest one. But once we overcame that, I think the other ones haven't been as bad.
Cool. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions come in the chat, so I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the event today, and thank you so much, Swupnil, for speaking today. This hasn't exactly been updated because it still says March 13th, which is today, but on March 20th at 10 a.m. we have a continuation of the speaker series with Farai Munjoma, who is the CEO of the Shasha Network, and he was awarded the Nisha Prize, which is given to the top 15 young entrepreneurs in Africa. And later that day at 2 p.m., we have our first workshop for the spring workshop series. Many of you might know we've been offering workshops in the summer and fall, and so we're We have a new workshop introducing you to how vaccines work, and then after that, it will be followed by our data analysis workshop, which many of you may have been to before. And then on April 10th, we have our annual STEM Inclusivity Forum on Crossing the Digital Divide. And so these are all the events that TeenTechSF has. I put the link for you to register for the next speaker series event in the chat if you haven't already. And so yeah, be sure to attend our next events. Also, daylight savings time is tonight, so be mindful of that. And thanks for coming today.